Here is the document that ends the argument before it starts. On May 13, 2026, a government-appointed planning inspector named Ken Taylor, presiding over a 6-day public inquiry, issued a ruling in the footpath dispute at Barton Court, Berkshire estate of James Matthews and Pippa Middleton. His ruling stated, and these are the words in the official record, questions of privacy and security were outside the scope of the inquiry. The Matthews family cannot rely on privacy and security concerns to justify closing a public footpath. That ruling was filed on May 13th. On or around June 8, 2026, a source speaking to Star magazine on behalf of Harry and Meghan told the publication with a straight face, Palace is letting the Middletons write their own rulebook on security, that nobody is raising a fuss about them taking advantage, that it has always been one set of rules for Harry and another set for everyone else. Government ruled against the Matthews family security argument in May. Meghan's team went to the press in June, claiming the government was doing the opposite. That is a 30-day gap between a public ruling and a press complaint that the ruling directly contradicts. And this is the case file. Give me 80 seconds, because the surface story here is embarrassing enough on its own. The story underneath it is the one that nobody in this space has put together yet. Meghan Markle is a strategically intelligent operator. She did not build a transatlantic media platform generating $60 million in her first Netflix deal by being careless. She did not navigate the institution she married into, extract herself from it, monetize the exit, sustain the narrative for 6 years through sheer luck. And this week, her operation made a mistake. Not a small one. Kind that lands worst on people who are genuinely capable, because competence makes the error harder to explain. By the time we reach Revelation 4, you understand why this specific mistake at this specific moment, Tom Bower's second book, already a Sunday Times bestseller, and the Netflix numbers doing what they are doing, may be the single most commercially damaging thing Meghan has done to her own story in 6 years. 5 revelations. One more structurally significant than the last. Stay with me. The question of why this story lands so hard right now has a specific answer. Sits at the intersection of 2 timelines that Meghan's team appears to have miscalculated simultaneously. The first timeline is legal. On May 2nd, 2025, the Court of Appeal delivered a unanimous ruling in Prince Harry's security case. 3 senior judges, Justice Jeffrey Voss writing the 21-page judgment, dismissed Harry's appeal comprehensively. Voss acknowledged that Harry felt badly treated and that his lawyers had made powerful and moving arguments. Then he ruled against him anyway, concluding that Harry's grievance was not legal grounds to challenge the security decision. Harry's response was a single statement: "My hands are tied in seeking legal recourse against the establishment." That statement was released after 3 rounds of court proceedings over. 5 years after a Freedom of Information Act request confirmed the taxpayer cost of those proceedings at £656,324, and after a prior rulings in the same case had already ordered Harry to repay 90% of the government's earlier legal costs, the legal avenue is closed. Definitively, 3 judges unanimous. The second timeline is commercial. Tom Bower published his second book on the Sussexes on March 26, 2026. The title is Betrayal, Power, Seat, and the Fight for the Future of the Royal Family, published by Bonnier Books. It was serialized in the Times magazine on March 13th, 2 weeks before publication, and became a Sunday Times bestseller. Meghan's spokesperson responded to the Times serialization with this statement, reported by People magazine. Mr. Bower's commentary has long crossed the line from criticism into fixation. Those seeking deranged conspiracy and melodrama know exactly where to find him. Statement A. Team called it deranged conspiracy and melodrama, framing Bower as a fixated critic peddling fabrications. Record B. Tom Bower is a 27-year BBC veteran and Panorama reporter. Richard Branson sued him for defamation, took the case to court, and lost, later publicly stating he regretted bringing the action. Bower's investigative biography of Geoffrey Robinson produced evidence specific enough that Robinson was suspended from Parliament. Bower's legal record is the cleanest in British investigative biography. His book survived defamation challenges because his sourcing methodology requires other people to attach their liars, and professional reputations to what they say. Calling his book deranged conspiracy while going to Star magazine with a claim the public record already disproves is not a communications strategy. That is 2 simultaneous credibility problems running in the same week, and credibility problems compound. One is containable. two working against each other in the same news cycle, with a documented public ruling sitting 30 days old in a planning inspector's report. That is what investigators call compounding exposure. Before the 5 revelations, one thing quickly. This channel is under 30 subscribers. It's not as a rhetorical device, but as an accurate statement of where it currently sits. No sponsors, no PR contacts, nobody in the royal media ecosystem approving this framing. Just publicly filed planning decisions, freedom of information disclosures, court judgments, and a willingness to put the numbers in the same sentence rather than in separate articles 3 months apart. Next week, this channel is going somewhere nobody in this space is currently willing to go, which is a detailed look at what the Sussex commercial platform actually looks like in mid-2026 when you put the Netflix numbers, as ever inventory figures, and the restructured deal terms in the same document and run the depreciation curve forward. Video will not stay up for long, so subscribe now. And now, back to the case file. Revelation 1. The ruling filed 30 days before the complaint, May 13, 2026. The 6-day public inquiry into the footpath dispute at Barton Court concludes its initial ruling stage. Government-appointed Planning's Inspector Ken Taylor states on the record, reported by The Telegraph, confirmed by GB News, AOL, Marie Claire, and ITV News, that questions of privacy and security were outside the scope of the inquiry. The Matthews family had argued that their high public profile, specifically their connection to the Princess of Wales, created a genuine security need that justified closing the footpath running through their estate. Inspector Taylor ruled that argument out of scope. Inquiry will instead determine, based on evidence from residents, estate staff, and local walkers, whether the public used the route known as Mill Lane frequently enough over a 20-year period from 2002 to 2022 to establish legal rights of access. The security argument was rejected through a proper government process, conducted by an independent government-appointed inspector. Writing. Now, here is Meghan's anonymous source, quoted in Star Magazine, reported by Yahoo Entertainment, IB Times UK, and Reality T, on or around June 8, 2026, 26 days after that ruling. No one is raising a fuss about them taking advantage. Palace reaction to Pippa and James seemingly asking for special treatment has been the opposite of Harry's experience. Has always been one set of rules for Harry and another set for everyone else. Let me put this plainly. Government rejected the Matthews family's security argument on May 13th. Meghan's source told the press on June 8th that the government was not raising a fuss about the Matthews family's security claim. Those two statements cannot both be true, and only one of them is supported by a publicly filed document. That is not a nuance problem or a framing dispute. That is a factual contradiction between a press complaint and a government ruling, with a 30-day gap between them and no possible explanation that does not involve either not reading the ruling or reading it and going to the press anyway. Think about that. The math fails. But here is the thing about that contradiction. It only matters in its full force once you understand what the underlying argument actually requires the facts to be, and that is what Revelation 2 addresses. Revelation 2. Sequence they hope you forget, March 7th, 2021. Oprah Winfrey interview. Harry looked into the camera and said, direct quote confirmed by AP reporting, "I never thought that I would have my security removed." That sentence became the emotional cornerstone of the Sussex narrative. The idea that the palace punished them for leaving, security was wielded as a weapon against a young family simply trying to find their freedom, that the decision blindsided them. Now here is the actual documented sequence. January 2020, Harry and Meghan announced they were stepping back from royal duties and intended to become, their words not mine, financially independent. 8 months later, in September 2020, Netflix deal was announced and confirmed by two Variety sources at approximately $60 million. Before the Netflix deal, the couple had held meetings with Disney, Apple, and NBC Universal. The New York Times reported at the time that they were seeking a deal in excess £75 million with multiple streaming companies simultaneously. Let that sequence sit for a moment. Announced financial independence in January 2020. During 2020, they were in simultaneous active negotiations with multiple global streaming companies. They signed a $60 million deal in September 2020. 16 months later, in March 2021, Harry told Oprah he never thought security would be removed. The story being sold is that they were blindsided. Security removal came out of nowhere as institutional punishment for the simple desire for a private life. Commercial pipeline for monetizing their royal identities was being actively built at the exact same time they were framing the exit as a mental health emergency. A $60 million media platform built entirely on a royal story, a story that only exists because of a royal identity, does not produce genuine surprise when the institution whose story is being sold stops funding the protection for free. That is not a betrayal narrative. That is a transaction, and transactions have documented consequences. Court of Appeal examined that sequence and reached a very specific conclusion. This is what Justice Voss put in writing in his 21-page judgment, and that is where Revelation 3 goes. Revelation 3. Judge actually wrote May 2nd, 2025. Court of Appeal, 3 judges unanimous. Justice Jeffrey Voss wrote 21 pages. Passage that Meghan's team does not want read aloud is this one, confirmed by AP Newsweek, PBS NewsHour, and GB News coverage of the ruling. From the Duke of Sussex's point of view, something may indeed have gone wrong in that an unintended consequence of his decision to step back from royal duties and spend the majority of his time abroad has been that he has been provided with a more bespoke and generally lesser level of protection. Read that at normal reading speed and you might absorb only the sympathy in the first half of it. Read it again and the second half is devastating. Voss is not saying Harry was treated fairly in an emotional sense. He is saying the lesser protection Harry is experiencing is the unintended consequence of a decision Harry made voluntarily, not a punishment. Not a conspiracy, not institutional malice. Cause and effect. Harry chose. The institution responded to the choice. 3 judges reviewed the process and found it lawful. After that ruling, Harry issued a statement saying, "My hands are tied in seeking legal recourse against the establishment." My hands are tied is not a legal analysis of a 21-page Court of Appeal judgment. It is a talking point designed to keep the grievance alive past the point where 3 senior judges have, at considerable length, definitively closed it. And here is what ties the courtroom to the Star magazine story directly. Double standard argument only works if the underlying premise holds that Harry was singled out, treated uniquely unfairly, without cause. Voss's judgment dismantles that premise in precise judicial language. The Matthews planning inquiry dismantles the comparison being made. Documented sequence of commercial negotiations dismantles the blindside narrative. 3 demolitions, 3 separate documented processes, all pointing to the same conclusion. Think about that, and then consider what the numbers underneath all of this actually look like. They are the part nobody puts in the same paragraph. Revelation 4. The numbers. In the same sentence here are 4 numbers. Nobody in mainstream coverage will put all 4 in the same sentence, so this channel is going to do it. Number 1. £656,324. That is the confirmed cost to British taxpayers of Harry's 3 security court cases, disclosed through a Freedom of Information Act request filed by the Daily Mail and reported by Newsweek and GB News in June 2025. The breakdown is precise. £554,000 on the original High Court case, an additional £102,000 on the appeal. Number 2, 90%. That is the proportion of the government's earlier legal costs that a High Court judge had already ruled Harry must repay, establishing a precedent that applies to the subsequent appeal costs. As GB News and Newsweek reported, Harry's estimated total personal liability, legal fees plus his share of the government's costs, sits at up to £1.5 million. Number 3, 0. That is the amount of public money involved in the Matthews family's electric security gate at Barton Court. It is a privately installed structure, privately owned land funded by private money with no public funding requested at any stage of the dispute. Number 4, 30 days. That is the gap between the government planning inspector ruling against the Matthews family security argument and Meghan's source going to Star magazine claiming the government was raising no fuss about the Matthews family's security situation. Private citizens privately funded gate on his own land, a £656,000 taxpayer-funded legal battle lost at every stage, a £1.5 million estimated personal liability, a planning ruling filed 30 days before the press complaint that contradicts. Meghan's source compared those things and called the difference unfair. The math fails. I'm not mocking the argument. I'm observing what it looks like when you put the documented figures next to each other in the same sentence. Is the one thing the coverage consistently refuses to do. Revelation 5. The platform and the pattern here is what the commercial picture looks like alongside the legal and PR picture Three of them together are why the timing of this week's story is genuinely catastrophic rather than simply embarrassing. 2022 Netflix documentary Harry and Meghan generated 815 million hours of viewing in its first 4 days, making it the #2 English-language television show on the platform globally in that period. With Love, Meghan, her lifestyle series, generated 12.06 million hours in its first 6 days in early 2026. That is an 85% collapse in audience appetite for the Sussex product, measured on the same platform in the same format with the same names in the title across a 4-year period. Original Netflix deal was $60 million, confirmed by Variety. It ran until 2025. The new arrangement is a first-look deal, is industry language for bring us something, and we will consider it, not we are writing the check up front. Financial structure has been fundamentally restructured from guaranteed income to conditional consideration. The Spotify deal ended in 2023. Netflix reportedly accumulated over $10 million in unsold as-ever inventory, Meghan's lifestyle brand, and according to reporting, the products on tables for employees to take home for free. Every commercial vehicle the Sussexes built by monetizing their royal story is contracting simultaneously. The grievance is the product is the royal story, and the audience data from the same streaming platform, measuring the same subjects, shows the audience for that product has declined by 85% in 4 years. Statement A. Sussex brand remains a commercially viable global media platform with ongoing Netflix content, an active lifestyle brand, strong transatlantic audience. Record B. An 85% audience collapse on Netflix, a restructured deal from overall to first look, $10 million in unsold brand inventory, a terminated Spotify partnership, and a legal platform that 3 judges have definitively closed, all documented in the same 12-month period. And at exactly the moment the commercial platform is contracting, the PR machine went to Star magazine, with a double standard story that a government filing already disproves. That is not bad luck. That is a strategy that has run out of runway meeting a news cycle that happened to contain a 30-day-old planning ruling. Let me slow down here because there is a voice in this story that has been given almost no coverage, deserves more than a passing mention. Sarah Ferguson did not name Meghan. She did not need to. In an interview with The Independent, said this, and I want the specific words on record. You chose to leave. Now go and live it and be it. It was my decision. If I'm going to go, go. And then she added something more specific. Members who choose to leave should not cry about not being invited to weddings. Peter Phillips, Queen Elizabeth's favorite grandson by most accounts, got married in June 2026. King Charles was there. Queen Camilla was there. Princess Anne was there. William and Catherine were there. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, who have largely retreated from public life since their father's situation became public, made a rare appearance because this was a family event and family shows up. Harry and Meghan were not there. This was not a state occasion governed by protocol. Not a coronation or a national ceremony where the guest list is determined by title. It was a private family wedding, kind where the invitation list is a quiet, honest, personal statement about who still matters to the people getting married. Sussexes were not on it. Ferguson's route after leaving the institution was children's books, television work, quiet rebuilding on her own terms, without calling the press each time a Middleton installed a fence on their property. She understood the transaction she had made Zaction when she left, and she accepted what the transaction meant. Difference between those two positions is not a difference between a victim and a villain. Is the difference between someone who chose to leave and accepted what leaving meant, someone who chose to leave and 6 years later is still going to the press arguing for the benefits of staying. That is not strategy. That is grief in a specific register, the grief of someone who has not yet made peace with the full cost of the choice that was made. No PR statement changes what that looks like to the people who were in the room at Peter Phillips's wedding. Here is the verdict. Meghan Markle is a genuinely skilled media strategist. The infrastructure she built after leaving the institution, the brand partnerships, content deals, the public positioning reflects real capability and real understanding of how modern media works. That record stands, and it deserves to be acknowledged accurately. And this week, her operation made a mistake. Not because the double standard argument is inherently unwinnable. Not because Tom Bower's book is necessarily accurate on every claim. The mistake was simpler and more structural than either of those things. Someone on her team went to the press with a security complaint and did not check or chose not to care whether the government had already ruled on the specific security argument being compared. A planning inspector's ruling filed on May 13, 2026, publicly accessible government inquiry stated clearly that the Matthews family cannot rely on privacy and security concerns as justification in their dispute. That ruling was sitting in the public record 30 days before the Star magazine story ran. The story went out anyway. One of two things is true. Either the research was not done, which is an operational failure from a team that built a $60 million media platform, or the research was done, and the bet was made that the general public would not go looking for a planning inspector's report in Berkshire. Those are both serious problems. One is incompetence. The other is something considerably more deliberate. Here is the question I want you to sit with, because I genuinely want your answer in the comments. Meghan's source told Star magazine that nobody is raising a fuss about Pippa and James taking advantage of their high-profile family connection. Government planning inspector ruled against the Matthews family's security argument 26 days before that story ran. So which is it? Nobody on Meghan's team read the ruling, or did someone read it and bet that you wouldn't? Because the answer to that question tells you something important about how the Sussex operation has been running in 2026, whether the 85% audience collapse is a result of the market changing or a result of the strategy having fundamental problems that the audience detected before the team did. Drop your answer below. I want to know which one you think it is. This story is not over. The next chapter starts not in a Netflix studio or a Montecito kitchen, but in a planning inspector's final ruling on the Barton Court footpath, because when that ruling lands, the comparison Meghan's team built an entire press narrative around will have a documented outcome sitting next to it. Documents are already telling the story. The question is whether the audience is still paying attention when the final page arrives.